Camelotropolis Prologue. The Vision. The needle slipped from Merlin's fingers, clattering against the cracked tile floor of the abandoned subway restroom. He didn't notice. His pupils had expanded to black discs, swallowing the faded blue of his irises as the chemical compound they called Avalon surged through his system. The city revealed itself to him then, not as the collection of concrete, glass, and steel that others perceived, but as a living organism of light and shadow, of ley lines and ancient power. Tonight, the patterns were different, troubling. Merlin pressed his palms against the grimy wall, feeling the pulse of the city through his fingertips. Camelotropolis was speaking to him, showing him things no one else could see. "No," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Not again. Not this time." In his vision, Excalibur Tower, Arthur's gleaming monument to urban renewal, was crumbling. Not through structural failure or neglect, but through betrayal. The city's golden age was ending. History was repeating itself, as it had countless times before. Merlin could see them all, the players moving like chess pieces across the board of destiny. Arthur at the centre. Guinevere and Lance, their connection burning so bright it threatened to consume everything. Morgan weaving her web from Avalon Enterprises. And Mordred, the smiling traitor, serving drinks laced with poison, both literal and metaphorical, from behind the bar at Camlin. Most disturbing of all was his own role. In the vision, Merlin saw himself locked away, his warnings unheeded, his wisdom dismissed as the ravings of an addict. The irony wasn't lost on him. The very substance that showed him the truth would be the reason no one believed him. As the vision faded, Merlin slumped against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the floor. His threadbare coat, once an expensive tweed befitting a university professor, pooled around him like the robes of a fallen wizard. From an inner pocket, he withdrew a dog-eared notebook and began to write frantically, recording everything he had seen before it slipped away like morning dreams. When he finished, he tore out the page and folded it carefully, tucking it into an envelope he'd prepared earlier. On the front, he wrote a single name, Arthur Pendragon. Tomorrow he would find a way to deliver it. Tomorrow he would try once more to change the pattern. But tonight, as the drug's clarity began to fade, Merlin doubted whether even the great Arthur could escape the wheel of fate that had been turning since before Camelotropolis had a name. Chapter 1. The Tower. Arthur Pendragon stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, watching the city spread out beneath him like a circuit board coming to life as evening fell. Lights blinked on in perfect patterns, traffic flowed like blood through arteries, and somewhere out there, decisions were being made that would shape Camelotropolis for generations. Many of those decisions, he knew, originated right here in Excalibur Tower. The latest polling data shows Mayor Penn's approval rating up another 3 points, Kay said from behind him, still scrolling through his tablet. The Round Table Initiative is polling even higher. People love the idea that we're letting neighborhood representatives have an equal voice with developers. Arthur nodded without turning. And the actual progress, beyond the polling? Kay sighed. His adoptive brother had never cared much for appearances, only results. A rarity in both business and politics that explained both Arthur's success and his occasional frustration with how the world worked. Construction begins next month in Orkney Heights. The community board signed off after Gwen, Mayor Penn, personally addressed their concerns. Kay hesitated before adding, "She's very good at getting people to say yes." Now Arthur did turn, one eyebrow raised. "Something you want to say, Kay?" Kay set down his tablet. "Nothing I haven't said before. Just be careful with how much we're tying Excalibur's future to City Hall. Politics is messy, and politicians." "Gwen isn't just a politician," Arthur interrupted, his voice firm but not angry. "And our marriage isn't a business arrangement, despite what the tabloids might say." "Of course not," Kay backpedaled. "I'm just saying that with the Grail project so close to completion, we need to be careful about all our alliances." Arthur returned his gaze to the window, to his city. The Grail project will change everything. Clean energy that costs almost nothing to produce, minimal environmental impact. It's what this city needs, what the world needs. "And what Excalibur Industries needs after the hit we took on the Corbenic acquisition," Kay added pragmatically. Arthur didn't respond to that. The Corbenic deal had been a rare misstep, one that had cost shareholders billions. Only Arthur's otherwise impeccable track record had prevented a board revolt. A soft chime interrupted them as Arthur's assistant entered the office. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Pendragon, but Commissioner Dulac is here to see you." Arthur's expression brightened. "Send him in, Vivian." Lance Dulac entered with the easy confidence of someone who had known Arthur since before he was a billionaire, before Excalibur Tower existed. His police commissioner's uniform was impeccable, his posture military straight, but his smile was that of an old friend. "Arthur. Kay." He nodded to each of them. "Sorry to drop by unannounced, but I was in the building for the security briefing on the Round Table Initiative launch." "No apology needed," Arthur said, moving to the wet bar. "Drink?" "I'm technically on duty," Lance said, then grinned. "But since when has that stopped us?" Arthur poured 2 fingers of scotch into crystal tumblers while Kay excused himself, mentioning something about quarterly projections that needed review. When the door closed behind Kay, Arthur handed Lance a glass. "He's worried about the company becoming too entangled with City Hall." Lance took a sip of his scotch. "Smart man, your brother. Lots of people have concerns about the power couple running Camelotropolis." Arthur laughed. "Is that what they're calling us?" "Among the nicer terms." Lance's expression grew more serious. "Actually, there was another reason I stopped by. We had to remove someone from the lobby earlier. Said he had an urgent message for you personally." "PR nightmare? Disgruntled former employee?" Lance shook his head. "Homeless man by all appearances. But—" he hesitated. "But what?" "He knew things, Arthur. Security protocols, personal details. Claimed he was Emrys Ambrose." Arthur's hand froze halfway to his lips. "Merlin? That's not possible. Merlin disappeared 3 years ago after his theories about market manipulation got him laughed out of academia, and he had some kind of breakdown. I know." Lance set his glass down. "But whoever this guy was, he had this for you." He removed an envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on Arthur's desk. The name Arthur Pendragon was written across it in a shaky but elegant script that Arthur recognized immediately. "Where is he now?" Arthur asked, staring at the envelope as if it might vanish. "Gone. Slipped away while the security team was calling for backup." Lance leaned against the desk. "Arthur, if this really is Ambrose, he's not the man you remember. The officers described him as obviously homeless, probably an addict." Arthur picked up the envelope. "He was the most brilliant mind I've ever known, Lance. Without him, I wouldn't have had the insights that built Excalibur Industries." "That may be, but brilliance and stability don't always go hand in hand." Lance watched his friend carefully. "What does the letter say?" Arthur broke the seal and unfolded the single page, his eyes moving rapidly across the cramped handwriting. With each line, his expression grew more troubled. "He says the city is in danger," Arthur finally said. "That history is repeating itself. That betrayal surrounds me." He looked up at Lance. "And that you and Gwen are at the center of it." Lance's face remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "The ravings of a disturbed mind, Arthur. You know better than to take it seriously." Arthur refolded the letter slowly. "Perhaps, but Merlin was never wrong before, not about the important things." He slipped the letter into his jacket pocket. "Thank you for bringing this to me." Lance nodded and finished his scotch. "I should get back. Gwen, the mayor has that fundraiser tonight, and I'm heading the security detail." "Of course," Arthur said. "I'll join you all later. Some things to finish up here first." After Lance left, Arthur returned to the window. The city looked different to him now, more dangerous, more mysterious. He removed the letter from his pocket and read it again. "The wheel turns. The king rises, is betrayed and falls. The tower crumbles, but the foundations remain deeper than anyone suspects. Look beneath the surface, Arthur. The answers are buried in the past. Find me before she finds me." Time is running out. Arthur pressed his palm flat against the cool glass, as if reaching out to touch the city itself. "Where are you, old friend?" he whispered. "And what are you trying to tell me?" Chapter 2, The Club. Music pulsed through Camlin like a heartbeat, the bass so deep it seemed to resonate from the foundations of the building rather than the state-of-the-art sound system. Lights painted the dancing crowd in shades of red and gold. Mordred's signature colors, a subtle tribute to the Pendragon family crest he was not officially entitled to claim. From his vantage point on the VIP balcony, Mordred Fay watched the writhing mass below with the detached interest of a scientist observing specimens. Each patron represented data, potential, profit, some more than others. His eyes tracked specific individuals. The investment banker whose cocaine habit made him susceptible to sharing insider trading information. The assistant district attorney whose weekend ecstasy use could prove useful leverage. The tech prodigy whose microdosing had evolved into something more dependence-forming. Knowledge was power, and in Camelotropolis, Mordred had been gathering both for years. "Your 11 o'clock appointment arrived," a voice murmured in his ear. Mordred turned to his head of security, a mountain of a man known only as Saxon. "Show her to my office, and make sure we're not disturbed." The office behind the VIP section defied expectations. Instead of continuing the club's sleek, ultra-modern aesthetic, it was furnished like an old-world library. Leather-bound books, antique desk, oil paintings. The only contemporary elements were the hidden surveillance equipment and the state-of-the-art computer setup behind a false bookcase. Morgan Fay was examining one of the paintings when Mordred entered, a romanticized depiction of medieval knights in combat. "Mother," he said, closing the door behind him, "I didn't expect you to come personally." Morgan turned, her sharp features softened lightly by an expert application of makeup. Her charcoal business suit probably cost more than what most of Mordred's clientele earned in a month. "The board meeting has been moved up," she said without preamble. "Arthur will be presenting the Grail project next week instead of next month." Mordred moved to a cabinet and withdrew a bottle of rare scotch. The same brand Arthur kept in his office, though Morgan didn't need to know that particular detail. "That accelerates our timeline considerably," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "Any indication why?" Morgan accepted the offered drink. "My sources say they've had a breakthrough. The project actually works." She took a sip, her expression calculating. "If Arthur brings this to market before we can position ourselves, Avalon Enterprises will be playing catch-up for years." "So we need the data now." Mordred leaned against his desk. "I may have a solution, but it's not without risk." "I'm listening." "One of Arthur's key researchers has developed a rather expensive habit." Mordred smiled thinly. "Not unusual in high-pressure tech development. He comes here on Thursdays, uses one of the private rooms." Morgan's eyes narrowed. "Which researcher?" "Gaheris Wright. Brilliant chemist, terrible poker player. Owes my establishment a significant sum." "And you think he'd betray Arthur?" "The great and noble Arthur Pendragon inspires pathological loyalty in his people." The bitterness in Morgan's voice was subtle but unmistakable. Mordred's smile widened. "Everyone has their price, Mother. For some it's money, for others it's protection, for many it's simply the next fix." He sipped his scotch. "Gaheris falls into the latter category." "What do you need from me?" "Capital. What I'm thinking of offering him isn't cheap." Morgan set down her glass. "Done. But I want to meet him personally when the time comes." Mordred raised an eyebrow. "That's unusually hands-on for you." "This is unusually important." Morgan moved to the window overlooking the club. "My dear half-brother has held this city in his thrall for too long. His talk of equality and community empowerment through the Round Table Initiative is winning hearts and minds. The Grail project would cement his legacy." "While we remain in the shadows," Mordred finished for her. "I've lived in Arthur's shadow since we were children," Morgan said, her voice hardening. "I won't let the future of Camelotropolis be determined by his naive idealism." A knock at the door interrupted them. Saxon entered without waiting for permission. "Sorry, boss, but there's a situation downstairs. That homeless guy is back, making a scene about needing to speak with you." Mordred frowned. "What homeless guy?" "Older man, beard, keeps calling himself Merlin and saying he knows what we're really selling." Morgan turned sharply at the name, her eyes locking with Mordred's. Something unspoken passed between them. "Bring him up," Morgan said before Mordred could respond. Discreetly. When Saxon left, Mordred raised an eyebrow at his mother. "You know this man?" "Emrys Ambrose," Morgan said, an unexpected hint of respect in her voice. "Former economics professor and the closest thing your uncle ever had to a mentor. Brilliant mind before he lost his way." "And why would he come here looking for me?" Mordred asked. Morgan's smile was cold. "Perhaps he's simply looking for his next fix." Your Avalon compound has become quite popular in certain desperate circles." She moved toward the door. "I'll leave you to deal with this. Keep me informed about Gaheris." After she left, Mordred opened the false bookcase and accessed his computer. A few keystrokes brought up a database, and he typed in Ambrose Emrys. The file that appeared was extensive, including academic papers, news articles about his fall from grace, and surveillance photos. The most recent photo showed a haggard man who bore little resemblance to the distinguished professor in the earliest images. But the eyes were the same, penetrating, knowing, as if they could see through people and time itself. Saxon's voice came through the intercom. "Boss, he's gone again, slipped away before we could grab him." Mordred frowned, staring at the image on his screen. "Find him," he said finally. "I want to know what he knows about our operation. And Saxon." "Yeah, boss? When you find him, bring him to me alive and unharmed. He may be more valuable than he appears." Chapter 3. The Mayor. The Grand Astolat Hotel ballroom glittered with Camelotropolis elite. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, all gathered for the Mayor's Fund for Urban Development Gala. At the centre of it all, Mayor Guinevere Penn worked the room with practiced charm, her emerald gown catching the light as she moved from group to group. To most observers, she was the perfect political success story. Brilliant policy mind, photogenic, married to the city's most powerful businessman. Few knew the constant calculation behind every smile, every handshake, every carefully crafted statement. Fewer still recognized the ambition that burned beneath her polished exterior, ambition not just for power but for a vision of what Camelotropolis could become. "Madam Mayor," a voice said behind her, "you've outdone yourself tonight." Gwen turned to find Lance Dulac, immaculate in his dress uniform. His official role tonight was security oversight, but they both knew he could have delegated that task. "Commissioner," she said, her tone professional but her eyes conveying something more, "I didn't think you'd make it. Wild horses couldn't keep me away." His smile was warm, private. "Is Arthur coming?" A shadow crossed Gwen's face. "Working late. Again, the Grail project is at some critical juncture, apparently." Lance nodded, maintaining appropriate distance between them, despite his desire to do otherwise. He mentioned something was accelerated. Board meeting moved up. "Of course it was," Gwen sighed. "The needs of Excalibur Industries wait for no man or woman." A waiter passed with champagne, and Gwen took a glass despite having nursed the same one for the past hour. Appearances mattered. "He does love you," Lance said quietly. "I know." Her smile turned sad. "That's what makes this all so complicated." "Mayor Penn!" A jovial voice broke their moment. Council President Lot McGregor approached, his expensive suit straining slightly at his midsection. "Spectacular event. The donors are practically throwing their checkbooks at your staff." "Councilman," Gwen's political mask slipped back into place seamlessly, "I'm glad it meets with your approval." "More than approves," Lot said, lowering his voice. "Some of us are starting to think you might have higher aspirations than City Hall." He glanced meaningfully at Lance, then back to Gwen. "The right partnerships could take you very far indeed." Before Gwen could respond, her assistant approached. "Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation that requires your attention." "If you'll excuse me, gentlemen," Gwen said, grateful for the interruption. Her assistant led her to a quiet alcove off the main ballroom. "There's a man at the service entrance insisting he needs to speak with you. Security was going to remove him, but he mentioned something about Arthur's blind spot that made me think you might want to hear him out." Gwen's political instincts flared. Description: older man, dishevelled appearance, calls himself Merlin. Gwen's composure cracked for just a moment. "Take me to him and keep this quiet." They slipped through the kitchen and down a service corridor to a loading dock where 2 security guards flanked a bearded man in a threadbare tweed coat. His appearance was that of a homeless person, but his posture and the intensity of his gaze suggested something else entirely. "Leave us," Gwen told the guards and her assistant. When they hesitated, she added firmly, "Now." When they were alone, Gwen approached the man cautiously. "Professor Ambrose?" "It's been a long time." Merlin's laugh was dry and brittle. "Not Professor anymore, Mayor Penn. Just Merlin now. The old names have a way of returning, don't they?" "What do you want?" Gwen asked directly. "To warn you, as I've warned Arthur. He stepped closer, and she caught the sour scent of someone who hadn't bathed recently, mixed with something chemical she couldn't identify. The pattern is repeating. Camelot falls, the king is betrayed. But this time there are variables even I didn't anticipate. Gwen maintained her composure. You should know I don't put much stock in prophecies or patterns, Professor. And yet here you are, a queen once more, standing at the crossroads of loyalty and desire. His bloodshot eyes seemed to look through her. I see them circling, Guinevere, Morgan, Mordred, but the most dangerous betrayal always comes from those closest to the throne. A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the night air. Are you threatening me? Merlin shook his head, suddenly looking exhausted. I'm trying to save you all. The wheel turns, but the path isn't fixed. Not entirely. He reached into his coat and removed an envelope. Give this to Arthur. He won't listen to me, but he might listen to you. Gwen took the envelope warily. Why come to me and not directly to him? Because you stand at the fulcrum, Merlin said. Your choices in the coming days will determine everything. He started to turn away, then paused. The Commissioner. You believe what you feel for him is love. Perhaps it is. But ask yourself this, in all the stories, all the iterations, has that choice ever led to anything but ruin? Before she could respond, he slipped away into the shadows, moving with surprising agility for a man in his condition. Gwen stood there for a long moment, the envelope heavy in her hand. Finally, she tucked it into her clutch and composed herself before returning to the gala. Lance found her immediately. Everything all right? Fine, she said automatically. Just a minor issue with the catering. His eyes, which missed little, noted the slight tremor in her hand as she reached for a fresh glass of champagne. Gwen? Not here, she whispered. He nodded almost imperceptibly. My security team reports all clear. I could escort you home after your speech. Arthur texted that he'll be working through the night. The envelope seemed to burn inside her clutch. Merlin's words echoed in her mind. Has that choice ever led to anything but ruin? That won't be necessary, Commissioner, she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. But thank you for your diligence. The hurt that flashed across his face was quickly masked, but she felt it like a physical pain. Of course, Madam Mayor. He stepped back, professional once more. If you'll excuse me, I should check in with the perimeter team. As he walked away, Gwen felt the weight of choices, past, present, and future, pressing down on her. From across the room, she caught Councilman Lott watching their interaction with interest. The wheel turns, Merlin had said, but this time, Gwen silently vowed, she would find a way to break the pattern. She just had to figure out which pattern she was trying to break.